I love Kinch stress.
The Chiefs make a wave of moves in free agency. Let's talk about it.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
It's a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC. You could hear Matty Lane to start this show before things got here, so you know he's here. Craig Stout is also here as well. Matthew, happy free agency to you.
Oh man, we have been humming along in this free agency. It has been lightning, left, right, moves all over the place. Not necessarily for the Chiefs, but moves all across the NFL. Craig, how have you enjoyed your free agency period so far?
I've been enjoying it a lot. I think it's only fair that I break this exclusive news on the KC Laboratory. I am pretty Ricky 213. I am the guy that has been the talk of free agency this entire time. I'm leveraging every connection in the NFL that I have right now to break news ahead of when it happens.
It's impressive.
I'm that guy.
Dude, I we'll get into some pretty Ricky later because there's a guy out there that is basically doing what happened in the NBA earlier this year, breaking all of these free agent stories well before they're happening. He had Calvin Ridley's $90 million contract. He's had
everybody went, oh, there's the first one that he's wrong on. There's no chance in hell that anybody pays Calvin Ridley $90 million.
And then they did.
And then it happened.
And he has some Chiefs news that he's bestowed upon us, which really won't surprise too many people. But we'll get into that here in a little bit. Thank you, everybody, though, for joining us today. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate your support of KC Sports Network, and we're excited to be talking with you today. Let's start with a few moves that the Chiefs have been able to make. Yes, just riveting stuff. But still, reason for excitement because Mike Pennel is back.
Yes,
Deon Bush.
Yes,
also back. Those two big moves right off there. Hey, look. Also, by the way, I know Maddie's talked a little bit about this. Irv Smith. Outside free agent, big, they've made some small minor moves here as what we anticipate is a few more aggressive moves here in the very near future. Maddie, how excited are you to have Mike Pennel back though?
Oh, I love that signing. I think bringing Mike Pennel back is huge. I'm kind of surprised. I thought they'd maybe wait till the middle of the year again because it just seems like in years past, there hasn't been a rush to bring him back. But I think when you look at this defensive tackle room, he is the guy that has the most experience like in this Chiefs system among the guys that are still here with Neil Farrell being traded for last year, Isaiah Buggs coming over. That's probably your nose tackle rotation right there.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. Like I'm plenty good with that. Mike Pennel turns it on for the playoffs, right when you need him. I kind of like what Isaiah Buggs has shown in the NFL. I think he's been good in that role. They clearly saw something in Neil Farrell. So I think Pennel rounds out that room. It kind of takes care of a position that you come into free agency with a little bit of a weakness without spending, that much money on it, which is a position you can probably afford to do that, especially paying Chris Jones a lot of money next to him. So awesome signing. I'm glad he's back.
Yeah. Anytime you can add a 2-time Super Bowl champion to the roster, it's a good time. Like it's a really good time. But, that's what they did with Deon Bush. Add another one with Mike Pennel. I think it makes all the sense in the world. He is just a fantastic locker room guy. Like, everybody loves Mike Pennel. I think you see that the way that everybody interacts with each other. I'm really hyper-focused on sidelines and, those sort of interactions when we do get to see him. Mike Pennell's always at the center of them. When you see guys that are mic'd up, Chris Jones mic'd up, who's sitting right next to him? Mike Pennel. Like they're good buddies, and he helps bring the morale of the room and stuff like that. We just, the Chiefs just lost another kind of morale guy, an energy guy in Willie Gay Jr. going to the New Orleans Saints. Makes all the sense in the world with the current depth at that position and the kind of glue guy that Mike Pennel is. He should be on this roster. We'd even joked, hey, what are you doing? Just come join the practice squad, hang out. You're going to be on the active roster sometime. They go ahead and they make the move. Full active roster spot for Mike Pennel. I'm really excited for that.
Well, and you're looking at a 90-man roster spot and very likely minimal dollars associated with these. Like, I'm not entirely sure that Deon Bush or Mike Pennel are getting guaranteed money. It's probably in the vein of a veteran minimum type contract where, you're probably not having to allocate a ton of cash to them, and maybe their jobs aren't even guaranteed. If you're going to tell me one of those guys is their role's more guaranteed, I'd say Pennel. I think Pennell's probably the one more likely of those two that is going to get a little bit more money. That would be my guess. I think Deon Bush was back here on a vet minimum contract last year. So obviously Pennel was, because he was a street free agent when they brought him back. But I think one thing with the Chiefs is Brett Veach likes to have his team kind of in place as much as he can before the draft. And what that means is, and not like the final version of the team, but he wants to be able to roll out a football team, a competent football team, before the season even starts. So, like before the draft even starts. So having some foresight to have a Deon Bush back in the mix, having the foresight to have a Mike Pennel back in the mix. They may not guarantee themselves a roster spot necessarily, but they're gonna have a chance to earn a roster spot. And if the Chiefs needed to roll out tomorrow, both of those guys are probably on the 53-man roster. So that it's I don't know. I like what they did. Any thoughts on Irv Smith, Craig? We've talked to Maddie about it, or Matt's had an opportunity to talk about it. But, any Irv Smith takes?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good signing. When the Chiefs didn't extend an RFA tender to Jordy Fortson, there were lots of conversations. I can't remember if it was Nick Taylor. I know Matt Derrick had a tweet that was out earlier today. Maybe Matt Derrick was on the original one, but said that they'd like Jody Fortson back. They're currently discussing a contract. They just don't want him back at that cap hit, essentially. And when that kind of came out, and then shortly after that, it was Irv Smith signing, I went, oh, well, maybe the Jody Fortson conversation isn't going the way that the Chiefs want it to. They're trying to insulate themselves with another big body that can get out, that can move a little bit, has never lived up to his potential in the NFL, has always had hype that followed him everywhere he went, and has just kind of not lived up to that so far. So I think he's a guy you're bringing in as a tight end 3 or 4. You're not having him, take any serious reps. He's not going to push Travis Kelce. He's not going to take spots away from Noah Gray, in my opinion. So have a guy that you're gambling on a little bit more. This is a Brett Veach special. Buy low. Try and maximize an athletic dude with a limited role in the offense. That's what you typically see him do with some of these bottom of the roster spots. He can play a little bit of teams for you, but I'm really looking at him in kind of the Jody Fortson role that we have seen over the past several years when he's been healthy. It's been one that the Chiefs have used. It's not saying that, he's going to get 2 snaps all year or something. He's going to get some snaps every game, but I'm looking at it more in line of that. He's certainly, going to be a camp guy with a chance to be tight end 3 for this team. There is a role for him right now, but I think they're probably not done adding tight ends. I don't think that this move precludes you from adding anybody else to try and take that tight end 3 or tight end 2 spot.
And I think it's low risk. It's low stakes. There's really no stakes really associated with it, because they're not losing out on a ton of money if they do move on from an Irv Smith. So I think it's a worthy attempt to try to help solidify the tight end position. I could see them carrying 4 tight ends this year because of Travis Kelce, and I think there is a load management incoming for Travis Kelce. I think you started seeing that last year too. So I do think there's probably going to be an attempt to try to elongate his career. And so maybe they make some roster decisions like keeping 4 tight ends and not trying to keep 8 mid wide receivers. Let's move on, because, well, we've been waiting for some moves, and we're at this point, and those were the big moves that we've seen through the legal tampering period, through the league year opening. And obviously, hey, look, Chris Jones is a big free agent move. And
Monster.
Drew Tranquill.
Yeah.
Big free agency move. So, but still kind of waiting to see how this team can make some changes that, improve upon last year's version of this team. So, we haven't really got any clarity on anything yet beyond just securing some of the players from last year's core. What do you take of all this, Matty?
that the Chiefs are once again, okay, not in a bad way, right? This is a nuanced conversation. The Chiefs brought back their best defensive player. They brought back a linebacker that needed to be brought back because they were going to lose Willie Gay. The team is in a good spot right now, and there is still plenty of free agency left and the draft and time to get better. This is not a panic-inducing thing. That said, the Chiefs are once again in the spot where they have a player on a franchise tag that they have no intention of keeping on a franchise tag, and it seems to be impacting what else they can do or the timeline at which they can make other moves. And that one thing is obviously L'Jarius Sneed. I don't think the Chiefs really want to play him on the franchise tag. I think if they really planned on doing that, they probably would have went a little bit deeper into Mahomes, restructure than they did. If that was the plan, they probably would have done restructured somebody else by now. Not saying it's impossible that they play him on the tag. I just don't think that's what they really, really want to do. So it feels like they're a little strapped right now because now they have to be cap compliant. Right now, with L'Jarius Sneed under the contract, like they don't have that much space. They only have about $15 million, I believe it is, in caps under the cap right now until they move on from him. It just feels like it's slow. It feels like they're having to slow play stuff because of the L'Jarius Sneed situation again. And it's unfortunate. It's not fun as a fan of the team, but I don't think it's anything to be upset about as of yet. We got more time to see how it plays out first.
Yeah, we do. I'm not too worried about it. Again, as we said on Monday, there weren't a whole lot of moves that I would have wanted the Chiefs to make. There's a couple. There's a handful, but nothing that I'm like angry about. That I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's definitely a move that needs to be made or anything like that. A lot of the guys that we've talked about as kind of free agent primer beforehand, still out there.
Yeah,
we're getting ready. We're going to talk about one here, but even from the tackle market, Jonah Williams just signed today. Tyron Smith is still out there. There are still a number of guys that are floating around out there that would definitely help this Chiefs team, and they haven't really spent any money yet. They restructured Patrick Mahomes today, created a whole bunch of space, made sure that they were cap compliant. Still lots of rumors flying around about L'Jarius Sneed getting traded to, basically at this point, we've narrowed it down to the AFC South unless another team comes into the equation. But there's a cadence of events that the Chiefs are clearly waiting to happen if they are going to add other guys to the equation. And the fact that none of those other guys that we've talked about, the Hollywoods, the Tyron Smiths, the guy, even Curtis Samuel that has been rumored to be, connected to the Chiefs, they're all still out there. They're all still sitting on the market right now. So it's not a panic by any means for the Chiefs. If we get into another week, we start seeing some of these names come off the board. We start hearing people connected to some of these guys that could really significantly improve this team. The Chiefs are still standing pat. That's when I'll start to get a little bit worried about the fact that they haven't had any major movement. But realistically, the major movement was Chris Jones. I know we all want a wide receiver for this team. They could still add a wide receiver on this team in free agency and in the draft. But Chris Jones was the major movement so far for this organization this period.
Yeah, and that's I know it's not a new name, but that is a big altering, contract that the Chiefs made a choice to, invest in their defensive tackle and keep him here. So the wake of that, we're going to see where they're allowed to spend, what they're allowed to spend, and allows the right word. Like, how do I say this? I know that some people are frustrated with the slow playing, and I know that some of the way that the off seasons have shaken, like last off season shook out with the Chris Jones situation, but it's not as simple as like get something done, Veach, right? There is a lot of stakeholders involved in the decision-making process for how much this team is willing to spend. And it starts with Clark. And actually, I mean, Nate Taylor kind of talked about that a little bit, on Only Weird Games this week is, there's a guy signing the checks. There's a guy that is, ultimately allocating a certain amount of resources to help this team make improvements. Some people are going to complain about the lack of resources in the locker room, but the Chiefs have a plan. I genuinely trust that they've got a lot of contingencies baked into how they want to approach things. I think, there is we'll get into the receiver here in a second, but there's very obviously a receiver that makes a ton of sense for the Chiefs that still hasn't signed with anybody. And there's a lot of things connecting him and pointing him to the Chiefs. So, until some of those dominoes start falling, until some significant dominoes really start falling where It's guys that make a ton of sense for the Chiefs. It's guys at positions of need. If the well's drying up, at some of these positions, like a receiver, you tackle. There's no movement in the tackle position really all that much. That's really affected, I think, the Chiefs standing. Until some of those things start happening, I'm not going to get too beat up about anything. And obviously I'd like to see some movement. I'd like to get more resolution on the L'Jarius Sneed situation and all that. But I do trust that Brett Veach has a lot of contingencies baked in for how this team wants to approach this offseason. He said it point blank, front and center at the NFL Combine. And I they navigated some stuff last year. I don't think they're caught off guard. I don't think it's a caught off guard as much as it is they're having to plan some things out. I think they'd want some resolution quicker. I think, but there's a lot of factors. It could be maybe they didn't get the compensation that they want for L'Jarius Sneed yet. So, or there's some dominoes falling, like the Jacksonville Jaguars giving $92 million to Calvin Ridley.
But they didn't. The Titans did.
Yeah, Titans. Yeah, you know what I meant.
I knew.
Okay, so I get what you guys are saying. Like, there's not a significant person that has been necessarily come. I mean, there's people that have come, players that have come off the board that would be very helpful to Kansas City on the deals they've signed. Like, we've gotten far enough into free agency that there has been helpful, useful players that would play and play a very big role in Kansas City that have gone off the board. So I don't want to say there's nobody the Chiefs should have signed like yet that they have lost out on doing so. I guess like my one thing is, again, not a panic thing. It's a nuanced take that like it's annoying as a fan to have nothing done, but it's not worth panicking. That said, we're comfortably into phase 2 of free agency, and the Chiefs have added Irv Smith. They've added a tight end 3-4 to compete for a roster spot so far, and you're entering phase 2 of free agency. That doesn't mean that you are, that doesn't mean your team is doomed. That doesn't mean the team can't get better, but that's definitely an unfortunate thing. And I think the reason it's really probably frustrating for a lot of Chiefs fans over the past 3 years, this has been the year kind of pointed towards of, hey, this is when they're finally going to be able to start spending again. This is when it opens up for them a little bit. This is when some of their big contracts and should be hitting, so they should be able to spend money this year. And so far, the money they've spent has just been to bring guys back. Now, maybe that plan initially didn't involve a $31 million per year to Chris Jones. Maybe that plan initially didn't involve having a cornerback on the franchise tag for the year. So I get how we got here, but I also think like it's worth noting, like we're getting a little bit farther into free agency to expect not a lot of help, but expect more than like one bit player, one person to come in and actually make a significant impact, I think, because it's getting later. The names are getting less and less that are out there that are available now.
And the thing that I keep coming back to with all of that is they've easily made money, it made space and spent money on players in day one of free agency in the legal tampering period. Like Jawan Taylor was announced almost immediately, just out of left field. Was, oh, okay, never mind. That's happening. So, it's one of those, they aggressively attack a position in free agency every single year. And the fact that they haven't has made a lot of people very uneasy. I'm seeing lots of, hey, Brett Veach fell asleep. Brett Veach isn't working. Brett Veach isn't doing all of that. He is. He's still out there. He's still moving some stuff around. But there's been a number of guys. Deontay Johnson yesterday was a big conversation topic that the Chiefs were very interested in him. The rumor that's out there, unconfirmed by anybody of serious note, but the rumor that was out there is that the Steelers didn't want to trade with the Chiefs. Why make another AFC opponent stronger? And so they trade him to Carolina and all of that.
Contender. They at least specifically said it was a contender. It wasn't
You're
just the Chiefs. They didn't want to send him to an AFC contender.
Yes. Yeah.
Which,
so, I mean,
it's just the Chiefs.
Probably just the Chiefs. I mean, who else is an AFC contender, right? Am I right, guys? Anyway, but they were involved in Mike Evans. They're involved in Deontay Johnson. Like, those are big names. Like, so I don't know that they're fully done. I don't know that there's not a move to be had there. I don't know that there's a move that, is readily out there. We're going to talk about Hollywood here in this next segment here, but there could be some trades. Deebo Samuel was reportedly on the trading block. I don't know how he fits with Rashee Rice in Kansas City. There's a lot of overlap there, but there are numbers of receivers that aren't perceived to be on the market that may all of a sudden just become available. And now all of a sudden the Chiefs look smart because they didn't go out, They didn't try and compete in the Calvin Ridley market, paying him $23 million a year. They're going to turn around and they're going to wait. They've got a guy that they've singled out there. It does seem, if the Deontay Johnson rumors are true, that they are very focused on adding a wide receiver 1 level player with the tie to Mike Evans, with the tie to Deontay Johnson. So I'm going to wait and see a little bit more. I'm not ready to fully panic here. It does seem like they're in on the right type of guys to, sort of raise the offense to the levels that we expect them to be at.
Well, if this team's going to raise the offense, they might have to go Hollywood. We're going to talk about that right after this break.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Thank you, everyone, hanging out with us today. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. As a reminder, KCSN Draft Guide is available for pre-order. It's going to release here in 4-ish weeks. If you sign up, you get 3 months to the KCSN Substack. You're going to get all of the premium content that we have at KC Sports Network, including a potential breakdown of Hollywood Brown if he eventually does sign with the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's talk about that. So there's been a lot of buzz and speculation surrounding Hollywood Brown and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, there is some talk that we'll get into Pretty Ricky in a second. It's wild. But even beyond Pretty Ricky, which we'll talk about here in a second, there has been a lot of buzz around Hollywood Brown to the Kansas City Chiefs from NFL Network. Some of the insiders there have been, quote unquote, speculating a little bit of connection there to the Kansas City Chiefs, potentially on a 1-year deal. Yeah, they're like a prove it deal was one of the things thrown around by Ian Rappaport today, or Mike Garafolo. Both of them have kind of commented on it at this point. The Pretty Ricky stuff from the top of the show, though. So, like I said, there's a guy out there, or there's somebody out there that is kind of doing what happened in the NBA, where a lot of stories and a lot of things were getting leaked out to the public from a Twitter account. This Pretty Ricky guy out on social media has been early by at least an hour on several major storylines. He's had Kirk, but most notably, he had Calvin Ridley's ridiculous contract well before anybody else did, and the Jaguars were in contention to get him, and then the Titans came in with a $90+ million offer that last second kind of helped sway him. All that stuff funneled through him. He reported it well before it even happened. He has been right this entire last few days. I have not seen him miss once.
King of free agency so far.
The king of free agency is Pretty Ricky 213 on social media. Earlier today, this morning, he reported that Hollywood Brown will be signing with the Chiefs after a L'Jarius Sneed trade, which both of those things are quite interesting.
So it started before that. It started just this morning as Hollywood Brown is going to be a Chief. It later became, as it was going throughout the day, that it would be after a L'Jarius Sneed trade. And I just want to pile onto that too. Last night, Hollywood Brown was streaming on Twitch, playing. I think he was playing some games. Maybe played Madden or something like that. But afterwards, during the stream, he was watching some Chiefs highlights on stream and, interacting with the chat and stuff. And then his final message before ending his stream was like, hey, tomorrow when I start to stream, you guys better be back here with something and reference that he would have signed. So Hollywood Brown himself said, now it could be engagement farming, whatever. He's, doing a Twitch stream thing. He said that he would be back the next day, which is today, and said he would be signed. So he thought that he was going to be signed by today at some point in time. Then that leads into the Pretty Ricky 213 talk about Hollywood Brown signing with the Chiefs. Sorry, just wanted to add the rest of it.
No,
there's a
it's
lot
great.
there.
On top of the NFL Network kind of hinting at it, on top of Hollywood Brown in the last couple hours being followed by Patrick Mahomes and Bobby Stroop, and Hollywood Brown following Justin Ross as well. There seems to be a lot of buzz and substantiated buzz, candidly. I mean, this would be the first miss for someone that is eerily correct on really intimate details about what's going on in the NFL right now. And I mean, just candidly, like there's been some buzz well before this too. Like this is not a surprise that the Chiefs are in on Hollywood Brown. I think there's been some buzz that has surfaced even during the season around Hollywood Brown. It seems like this is the receiver that eventually signs with the Kansas City Chiefs. There's a lot kind of around it. Maddie, if the Chiefs sign Hollywood Brown, how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, pretty good. I think it's a good signing. I think we all have been kind of like, hey, Hollywood Brown makes, going back to the trade deadline of last season, I think all three of us have kind of been like, hey, Hollywood Brown makes a lot of sense for this team. He immediately provides a speed that they didn't have at the time because McCole Hardman wasn't playing. He provides a receiver that maybe isn't he's not a wide receiver 1 and maybe not even an elite wide receiver 2, but he's pretty close, right? Like he has played at a wide receiver 2 level in the NFL when he has had a healthy quarterback. When the starting quarterback of his last 2 teams have played, he's been averaging, wide receiver, really good wide receiver 2 numbers with them. And that is Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson. So he's been a productive player when paired with a good quarterback. He kind of fills a need that this team needs of being able to stretch the field, and he gives them another kind of reliable intermediate threat. I don't think people realize this, but Hollywood Brown's really good in the intermediate areas of fields, especially on in-breaking routes. That's kind of a sweet spot. That's where he's been the best in the NFL, is on in-breaking routes to the 10 to 20-yard range. He obviously has the speed to work deep. He hasn't been as effective in those as you would hope, but he's also played with a lot of quarterbacks that throw like I do. And so it's been a tough go for Hollywood Brown. And I think he makes a lot of sense to set into this offense. I think he immediately adds a higher ceiling and a higher floor to what they have.
Yeah, I'd agree with all that. I just wish that we were done with all the, hey, this guy follows this guy on Instagram and following people's Twitch streams and all of that. That's my least favorite part of free agency. Just make it happen. So
why?
I just it's click farming. I really hope that, again, we talked about to kick off free agency that there were really 2 wide receivers that now, after Mike Evans was gone, that were difference makers, that you felt good about being able to pair like a round 2 wide receiver with them. You didn't feel like that needed to be a priority in round 1 or even trade up in round 1. Hollywood Brown and Calvin Ridley were those 2 guys. Calvin Ridley gets paid a lot of money. Hollywood Brown now, how much is he going to cost? Like, especially on a 1-year deal, that's a lot of money, which is why some of this kind of aligns. The Chiefs have some money. They've got some cap space. If they were signing a long-term deal for Hollywood Brown, then he'd absolutely fit under the cap. They'd figure out a way to structure that. If it is truly a 1-year deal, yeah, they probably need to move on from L'Jarius Sneed before they can make that happen. They're going to need all of that money so that then they can turn around and make some of the smaller moves, make some of the wave 3 moves. They got other restructures that they can do, but this is kind of a focused thing with Patrick Mahomes here to create the amount that they have. They could have restructured more. They chose this number for a reason. They are currently trying to figure some stuff out with salaries. Now, doesn't mean that L'Jarius Sneed is definitely getting traded, because, as the further we go into this, the more likely it is that maybe he's staying in Kansas City. We talked about that on Monday. However, at 1-year deal sentiment and the pairing of the L'Jarius Sneed timing with Hollywood Brown signing makes a lot of sense. Like, that just all aligns from a salary cap perspective. If you are going to have to pay Hollywood Brown on a 1-year deal, it's gonna be expensive, and it's gonna probably take up basically everything that you get from trading L'Jarius Sneed to another team.
Yeah, maybe a little bit less, but I'm with you. Like, it's gonna be a good chunk of it. I'm sure they're gonna have to give it. Yeah.
The Gabe Davis deal is just kind of where I was starting, because if you look at since Gabe Davis got in the league, which it would have been more Hollywood Brown's second year, Gabe Davis has played a few more games, but like their receptions are close enough. Their receiving yards close enough. Receiving touchdowns go to Gabe Davis. Like, I feel like they're pretty comparable production wise since he's come into the NFL. And Gabe Davis signed a deal that was $13 million per year with some incentives to get quite a good chunk higher. Right. So I think Hollywood will definitely be more expensive than that. I just wonder where you fall. It's going to be between Gabe Davis and Calvin Ridley. I just wonder where you fall. I wonder if it might not be a little closer to Gabe Davis because of the same injury concerns and stuff. I don't know. But I just thought that's a good place to start, because they have been relatively comparable production wise since 2020.
I would like the move. I would like the move. I'd like to get him, and like I think we talked about this a lot. The floor doesn't need to be too high for Patrick Mahomes to achieve. We saw that with the most efficient offense in the Patrick Mahomes era being led by Juju Smith-Schuster, and obviously Travis Kelce in his, kind of still in his prime a little bit. I just think that Hollywood Brown just raises that floor significantly, even if it's a 1 year, rental type situation. You give Rashee Rice, some more grace there. You give a rookie receiver a chance to develop further. And you're cooking with gas a little bit. I think if you have a Travis Kelce, Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, and then a early wide receiver pick, I think you can. I think that's enough. That's more than he had in the Juju year. And I'd like it. I think it'd be a good addition. There's not a ton of other players that excite me. There's been a few, like we can get into some of those best available players in some of these positions here.
Cool, quick bit. Before we move on from Hollywood, can I ask you guys a question? If they sign Hollywood Brown, what's the next step with the wide receiver room? Right? They sign him. Let's even call it a 1 year deal for now. What's the next step for the wide receiver room for you guys?
Probably cutting Kadarius Toney. Oh, you mean addition? Oh, okay.
I think you just did addition by subtraction. So.
I did.
I mean, I don't want to dive too much into this, but Curtis Samuel still makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like, even with a Hollywood Brown signing, I'm not the biggest Curtis Samuel fan. He obviously had some vertical stretch when he was younger, but isn't really used that way anymore. Wasn't in Washington, was more of like lots of wheel routes, lining up in the backfield. It was Kadarius. It was lots of jet motions and things like that. And while I kind of turned my nose up at that, I mean, like, don't pay a guy like that a whole bunch of money, I also look at Andy Reid saying, I need a Kadarius Toney in my offense, and then going, oh, well, maybe not that Kadarius Toney. Maybe not the actual Kadarius Toney. Before that, it was McCole Hardman. How are we going to use him? We're going to use him on a lot of this sort of stuff. We're going to use him. We're going to align him in certain ways. Sky Moore, even when they signed him, it was like, hey, we're going to line him up in the backfield sometime. We're going to do some of this. Andy Reid uses those types of guys really, really, really well. And I don't think that it's an overlapping kind of thing by adding Curtis Samuel and Hollywood Brown. I know people are going to look at that and go, fast guy go Burr, but it's not like the same. It's really not the same. And I feel like those two can coexist. And if they truly want that Kadarius Toney archetype, that McCole Hardman early in his career archetype, the way that they use Tyreek Hill a little bit, again, not the same athlete as any of those guys, but does a lot of the same things in the alignment and motion and stuff like that. I can see an addition like that still, especially since he's probably not going to cost very much.
I think the next step for me would be if you get Hollywood Brown secure, I'm not stopping looking at veterans, but I'm definitely doing it on my terms. So I don't know if I'm hunting for a wide receiver as much as I am, just kind of trying to find value and just kind of trying to find somebody that will, operate on my terms. So, maybe Curtis Samuel falls into that bucket. Who knows? But I just kind of continue to keep an eye out and see if I can try to, lengthen the lineup a little bit. I don't know. I don't want to talk about potentially cutting so many guys, but it wouldn't surprise me to see the Chiefs move on from Kadarius and Sky and Justin Ross. Honestly, that wouldn't surprise me if they did that. And if you're gonna do that, you're gonna have to lengthen that lineup a little bit. I don't think all three are gonna be gone, by the way. I think they'll keep at least one of those guys. But someone asking Josh Reynolds. Pretty Ricky's saying what $6 million deal for Josh Reynolds
back to Detroit.
Back to Detroit. He would have been a fun little ad. Like a Jawan Jennings would have been a nice ad, but I think he got a second round restricted free agent tender. So the Niners are not letting him leave. He would have been a fun role player to introduce into the offense too.
I'm with your plan. I'm with the idea of if somebody falls into your lap a little bit later, you obviously add him. Maybe Hunter Renfrow doesn't have any suitors and you kind of add him. And the same concept is Curtis Samuel, right? You're just adding an underneath guy or whatever it may be. I'm fine with it. I think if you get Hollywood Brown, though, I think I, at that point, feel confident enough going into the draft with the wide receiver room what it is and addressing it still early in the draft, especially if Hollywood Brown is on a 1-year deal like been rumored on NFL Network.
Yeah.
He might be. Then you're still round 1 wide receiver, wide open for any type of player you want. Even if it's a multi-year deal, I think you could just go into the draft looking for a round 1, 2, 3 wide receiver and probably live with a Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, the rookie. Hope Sky Moore takes a bit of a jump in a more limited role this next year. You don't give him the entire playbook, but you give him a specific role. Hope that returns back to some of his rookie flashes. You have Justin Watson, who still fills a role. Like, I think they might be okay. I think Hollywood Brown's good enough that I think you might be okay to go into the draft and be done with free agency at that position. If he's the guy you bring in, I think it just kind of matters how long the deal is going to be and who's sitting there 2 weeks from now and might be willing to pay for 1 year for $3.5 million.
We'll get into some of the best players available here too, because I have a couple questions about some other guys. Sure. Let's talk a little bit about the potential to add a veteran running back, though. A lot of buzz on NFL Network too about the Chiefs being in the veteran running back market. It makes sense. You know, they really only have Isaiah Pacheco and Samaje Perine, or is it Lamichael? I get those mixed up.
Samaje would be nice, but
Samaje would be great right about now.
Bad, but
yeah.
But yeah, I think it makes sense that the Chiefs would be interested in a veteran running back. One of the names that's been thrown around is J.K. Dobbins, and Maddie, it seems like that's one name that you're kind of excited about.
Excited's a strong word, but it's one that I would 100% get. He's a very talented running back that has had crazy bad injury luck, and he, you would sign him for a deal that is pretty much league minimum, maybe with some incentives, but when healthy, he can go out there and he can run really fast. And I think that he runs fast in a different way than Pacheco does. Pacheco gets a little bit of a runway. He builds up to his speed and he's ready to go. J.K. Dobbins has legitimate. It's one cut. He's gone. He's really quick. The issue is he's coming off of, I believe, an Achilles tear. That's a rough injury for running backs. Running backs usually don't bounce back the same. So that's why it's kind of not a shot in the dark, but it's a long shot. And the reason, if you do that, you still got to bring back, you still need another running back. The Chiefs might need 2 running backs right now, the way it is. Right? I don't know if they're ready for a Lamichael Perine to step up and be kind of that next. Keontae Ingram, I believe, is still on the practice squad or futures contract. I don't know if they're ready for either one of those 2 guys to be the solidified third down back. So if you bring in a guy like J.K. Dobbins, you probably still need to add another veteran, but you're not spending enough money that it matters. So it's a completely low risk, potentially high reward move that I just think would be a fun little add for the backfield.
Oh yeah, no, he's like a vetmin 90-man roster kind of guy right now. And I know that all of these running backs are getting paid, but he tore his Achilles week 1 of last year. He is still actively in rehab. He's not healthy yet. And while it seems like he's trending really well, NFL teams are just completely risk averse for those sorts of things. So I don't see a big contract out there for him. This may be best situation for a guy like J.K. Dobbins, looking around and saying, oh, hell, maybe I want to go to Kansas City. Maybe I'd rather be there. I'm going to get an opportunity to be a little bit more of a third down back. I'm going to get some runway as well. They're not just totally going to lean on Isaiah Pacheco. Year 1, he was a backup, for this or for the Ravens organization. Played in 15 games, only started 1, had 134 carries for 805 yards. Like, that's 6 yards an attempt. And granted, that's the Ravens offense. They put a lot on your plate. You can create some more explosive plays out of that. But he really did step into the NFL, and the game speed was not too much for him before injury. So you're looking at this a little bit. We didn't get to see much of him. Again, week 1 last year, he gets hurt. The year before, he got hurt as well, only played 8 games. You don't know what you're really getting. You don't know the shape that you're getting. So NFL teams are just not going to buy in on that. The Chiefs have so much room in their running back room right now that even at a vet minimum deal or slightly above, that's a gamble that I think I'd be willing to take. Like, I'd even probably sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal on the hope that you can capture lightning in the bottle and try and turn it around and have a running back that's still young. He's going to be 26, still very young. You hope that he recovers. You hope that you get the most out of him, and you hope that you compare him with a guy like Isaiah Pacheco, because they have completely different running styles and they really do complement each other really well.
I anticipate the Chiefs will continue to monitor the running back situation, but I would be a little surprised if they give a ton of real money to a running back. there does seem to be a pretty strong market because I think teams are trying to get out ahead of the free agency or the draft class, which isn't particularly strong at the running back spot. But I think it's more about how I think they might be approaching receiver if they do wind up signing Hollywood Brown. It's like we'll look at value, we're going to find value, but they're not going to be too aggressive in trying to secure somebody. I think they can find some players that can fill out the running back room. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still out there. I'm curious what his market looks like, but like he's a guy I'd bring back on a veteran minimum kind of contract too. And I'd be kind of surprised if he gets any money, really. And not that he didn't play well. It's just, I don't know. I feel like a lot of teams have invested in the running back position and then everybody else is just kind of playing a bargain approach. And it doesn't seem like the Chiefs are going to be allocating a ton of resources when there's so many other things that they've got to figure out. But I do think that you will see some outside running backs that weren't on last year's team kind of fill that group up when it's all said and done. I think there'll be at least one addition from outside of the organization. Okay, so before we get out of here, let's talk a little bit about some of the best players available. I think if you're looking at some of the positions that the Chiefs could be very intentional about, acquiring players, I don't think that there's been a ton of damage to them. I don't think the Chiefs were in on Calvin Ridley. We know Hollywood Brown's still out there. A couple new names did get added into the mix, though. We got Mike Williams, Hunter Renfrow, a couple AFC West opponents, a couple AFC West teams paying for the sins of their mistakes of still not winning the division and not having any rings. And in Vegas's case, not having as many playoff wins in their own home stadium as the Kansas City Chiefs do. Would either of those recently released receivers appeal to you guys at all? A Mike Williams from the Chargers or a Hunter Renfrow from the Raiders?
I mean, yeah, if the right price, shows up, sure, they both appeal to me. I feel like Mike Williams is probably going to be a little expensive just because I think there's still this perception that he is really not really good. He's a very good football player, but I think there's a perception that he is still like this game-changing wide receiver, and I don't know if the Chiefs are in a position to want to pay him that. And then furthermore, he's a contested catch vertical guy. And I know every fan and every national media member wants to put a guy just like that in the Chiefs offense. They've never really done it. Their biggest attempt has been Justin Ross, who they slowly integrated as an undrafted free agent signing, so I just don't think they care for that role. The Hunter Renfrow one's a little bit more interesting. I think he'll be a little cheaper. I think if you have a Hollywood Brown or don't, and then have a Rashee Rice on the other side, I think you can find a role for Hunter Renfrow being a possession target out of the slot, working in the space that's created. I would understand that logic and price a little bit better.
Yeah, I also look at Renfrow as a guy I know, and see Mike Williams as well. Like, we Chiefs fans see these guys all the time. We remember their good games. We remember the touchdowns that they score against the team we support's defense. So we look at some of those sorts of things and we go, oh, wow. Like, I can really see Mike Williams fitting into this offense. Look at all of these plays that he made over these guys. He's a contested catch guy. And we just got done with a season with guys that were some contested catch guys that didn't gel with Patrick Mahomes. We spent a past couple of years going, does that matter? Does separation really matter for Patrick Mahomes? Or has he just not have a guy that has really been elite at the catch point, and that's why he doesn't throw him? We've got enough examples of guys, again, not elite at the catch point, but good enough to where they're not throwing those sorts of things. They're not okay with integrating that as part of their offense, as a major part of that. Hunter Renfrow, living in the slot, makes a little bit more sense, but he's getting cut from a team that lives in these shallows and intermediate areas of the field. Like, that's where they eat right now, and he makes a lot of sense for teams that do that. Why is he getting cut? What's going on there? Why is he not integrated in with that organization, that system and things like that? I can see him coming in. I can see the ways that he can win, but you're also, especially if you are adding smaller guys, we talked about Xavier Worthy. If you're adding a Hollywood Brown, you're seeing Rashee Rice is about 50-50, whether he's in the slot or outside. There's a lot of slot snaps that the Chiefs are currently using on other guys that are more integral to this offense than Hunter Renfrow. I'm not saying that he can't fit with all those other guys, but some of the matchups that Andy Reid really likes the most are those guys in the slots, getting Rashee Rice running into some open space behind some linebackers, getting to run into safeties and things like that. you're having Hunter Renfrow run those routes, he may be a little more crisp, a little more clean with them, but the yak's not going to be there. The explosive plays aren't going to come from those sorts of things. So while I see the fit, I can see how that works in this offense. I also see some of the ways that it can limit some of the good things that guys like Rashee Rice can do. And that's what they should be building the offense out of right now.
Maddie, who do you have your eyes on that you would like to see the Chiefs get involved with here?
I mean, I think offensive tackle's got to be the next one. Not a lot's gone off. A couple guys, like Jonah Williams got signed recently after the Cardinals released DJ Humphries, but like it's still for the most part pretty open. So Tyron Smith still available. You want to sign him if you move on from L'Jarius Sneed in a trade of some kind and you have extra money, you want to sign Tyron Smith to come in and play left tackle for a year while Wanya Morris is out there trying to push him for the starting role or getting reps behind him. That's a good one. Mekhi Becton still available. I know one's a lot more like hit or miss for fans. Some people are not into that move at all. I don't know. I see a first round pick that has a ton of talent and has flashed when he's been healthy. Bring him in. Let Andy Heck, a really good offensive line coach, see what he can get out of him. Those are probably my top two to go along with a Hollywood Brown signing.
Anything, Craig, that you'd like to see happen?
No, just end our long national nightmare of knowing whether or not L'Jarius Sneed is on this team in 2024 or not. Please. My heart can't take much more of this.
Do you know who he follows and liked? He liked.
Yes, I know he's liking Colt tweets right now. Okay. I hate this. I hate that is occupying part of my brain right now. It hurts me physically.
Okay. Hey, look, there is some conversation, some buzz out there that L'Jarius Sneed could be a Colt. So, we'll see. We'll find out. I'm reading some stuff on social media right now. There's some people that are kind of saying that. We'll find out if that's real or not, because I haven't seen it from Pretty Ricky, and he's the only person I trust with anything at this point. That's going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for reading, listening, watching, supporting everything we do here. We really do love you. We'll catch you later. I'm going to go listen to some Pretty Ricky now.